he says that the PQ brain, we want to exercise that more. That's the part of the brain that we want to think through, especially when we're confronted with conflict, because it allows for self-observation, centering in challenging situations, soothing negative emotions, and it allows for us to show empathy for self and others. This part of the brain that it's underused, because it's so easy for us to kind of fall back on that kind of negative, right? The fight or flight, thinking of me only, allowing our emotions get the better of us. So what he's advocating for is to use your PQ brain and acknowledge that this is even more important than your IQ. And you can read more through this. This is a very, very kind of cool concept. I would recommend reading through. You can find all kinds of good stuff online. And I'm not a doctor, but the PQ brain is here on the front part of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, tip number 9 says, don't be afraid to acknowledge responsibility for any mistakes you might have made or what the other person is right about. These gestures help build momentum going forward. And that's very true. After mediating for 15 years, when the person has acknowledged the responsibility, that's when we're breaking down barriers. The walls come down. When that person says, you're right. I'm sorry I said that. You're right. That's not what I meant. It came out the wrong way. Acknowledging the responsibility could be something quick and easy, like saying, you know what, Norlin, you're right. I'm sorry I said that. Or maybe it takes more courage and it has to be a bigger apology or a bigger conversation. But just the fact of doing it, I think helps you break down the wall and move forward. And with number 10, because I'm coming close to my time here. So no matter what you're doing to de-escalate the situation, and no matter what the other person may be doing to escalate it, always come from a place of respect, understanding, and humility. So regardless of what the political views are, right? Maybe we're in complete opposites. This is what my agency advocates for. Always treating people with dignity. We all have a human right to be treated with dignity and humility and respect, right? And so never going or veering off that train of thought, because when we start thinking that this person is less deserving of dignity and empathy and respect, we can't have conversations. We can't have healthy dialogues. So with that, that's my 10 tips. My computer is freezing here, so I'm going to stop sharing out. So those are my 10 tips for you today. Do you have any questions? Maybe this was a little refresher for some of you. I hope that I was able to introduce some new concepts, but I'm open for questions now. And now I can see my chat box, so I can look through them as well.
Please feel free. What's wonderful is Veronica's opened up such a nice possibility for us to really discuss and, give opinions. Please feel free to do so now. Anyone have a comment, questions? We have our author, Edith, who writes a lot. Many of her books, I've bought them for my grandchildren, and they deal with, respect for other people and some of these issues that you're talking about, Veronica.
Yes, and I saw Nancy's hand.
Yes, I have a question. How do you deal with someone who repeats a complete untruth, the conspiracy theory or whatever? Sending them something from fact check might not help. How do you handle that when you know it's an absolute untruth and it might even be wrong to spread that?
Good.
You're not going to change that person's mind, right? I think that's the first kind of thing that I think through. This person is clearly, out of their mind, or they're clearly wrong, or whatever I might think. So I think that's the first thing I say to myself. I'm going to try once to have some civil discourse here with this person. But if this person is completely somewhere out, functioning up here, then, I have to decide when is enough for me, right? So how many times are you going to try? Are you going to try one time? And then you say, you know what? We are clearly not going to agree on any of the discussion here, on any other points. If it's someone that's important to me, I say that I value our relationship, I value our friendship, and I want to maintain it, and I want to keep being friends. And so we're going to stop talking about this because I want to keep being friends with you, right? Mm-hmm. Or because I love you, or whatever it is. But, if you're not able to agree to disagree, that's fine. But I think what's the most important thing is what you're saying to that person and how you're saying it. We're clearly not going to agree on this situation. Let's move on. Let's talk about something else. Mm-hmm. And then I saw Nancy.
Yes.
Veronica, I understand the principle of acknowledge what you hear. Where I find is I can acknowledge the person. I hear what you're saying, but the next step doesn't mean you agree. And sometimes I feel like maybe I hang on to my. I want the person to know that I hear what they're saying, but at the same time, I don't want them to feel when I'm trying to explain this right. I don't want to go. I don't want somebody to feel that I've changed my mind on my opinion, especially if there's a principle involved. Like say if you're in a situation that is some of the situations that have come up, with the political stuff. So how do you respectfully listen to someone and still keep your opinion? How do you find that balance that you're listening, but you're not hanging on to your opinion so tight that
That's a good question, Nancy. And I say that to the person. Remember, acknowledging the other person doesn't mean that you agree. Acknowledging just means that you heard them, right? That you understand their position.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I've acknowledged the person, the second thing that I say is, I respectfully disagree,
Okay.
So let me get the opportunity now, just like I've given you, let me tell you why I disagree. Right. And you can say too, we might, at the end of this dialogue, we may not still agree, and that's okay. But I want you to be able to hear where I'm coming from, just like I heard you, where you're coming from.
Okay. Thank you.
When we say, I respectfully disagree with you, that brings the person down a little bit, right? So I think it brings the barrier down a bit.
Okay.
And I saw Nancy hand go up.
No.
I think Rebecca, do you have a question? Rebecca's got her hand here. I'm not sure if she.
Oh, there's three Nancys.
Rebecca, do you have a question?
Veronica?
Yes.
Oh.
When you get to the point where you feel like you're arguing with this person and you're getting angrier and angrier, you need to acknowledge that you are not going to try and change this person's mind, right?
Yes.
And, sometimes we feel that the harder we try and convince them otherwise.
Definitely. So again, it's up to you. How long can you last in there, right? How many rounds can you last? So it's really up to you to take care of yourself too, right? And so if you tried one round, I have the kind of the three rule, right? I try once, I try to acknowledge, I try to hear out. Then in the second round, I try to state my position, right, and where I'm coming from. Hopefully that third round is about us dialoguing back and forth. But if on that second round, if the person just keeps going and going, and I see that I'm not gonna get in there, then I say, I don't think we're gonna have a successful dialogue today.
Mhm.
Any
Lorraine?
Lorraine? You're muted.
Lorraine, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. I was thinking how, you can acknowledge what they say, but you don't agree with it. But I think another thing that I try to do, not always successfully, is to ask a question which tries to understand what the person thinks is the impact of them not getting what they talk about.
Mhm.
I don't
Asking
know if
questions.
that's clear or not.
Yes,
but I'll
absolutely.
say, we absolutely have to stop voting fraud. And then I might say to them, oh, I agree with you. We need to do that. How do you feel that voting fraud affects you personally?
Yeah.
And then kind of get them to talk about those things. And then that usually leads, I feel like getting them to talk more improves my understanding
Mhm.
and helps them get a bit off their chest.
Absolutely. Asking a question is always a good way, a good route to go.
Rochelle, do you want me to read your question or do you want to ask it?
I can ask it. So I work at Cal State San Marcos, and so we've been having some questions about how to manage conflict. And so I'll trim down my question in the sense of like, how would you use these tips in the college classroom? Discussion on the topic, because a lot of our faculty members have opted not to have difficult conversations and have just put it on us as like some staff. And so I just wonder, like, which of these 10 tips could we use as a framing of a conversation to start, and instead of them skirting away from actually having that conversation?
That's a great question. Well, I think that you can use all the tips, first of all, but I think to start the conversation, you can start with stating your perspective in a non-confrontational way, which leads you to troubleshoot together, right? Because the goal is to have that dialogue, but really stating your position in the conflict in a non-confrontational way. I think that's a good starter. That's kind of how I start sometimes my conversations, when I need to approach someone about a conflict, or there's conflict, I need to start talking to someone about it. That's how I start, stating how I perceive it, how the situation is impacting the team or the work, and then how we're going to work through it together. And that opens the door to, okay, well, let's talk about your perspective too. I see here a question about battered women. That's a very good question. We do mediation. So the question is, Veronica, AAUW focuses on situations involving battered women. Can these conflict resolution techniques work with the abuser?